Marcus Rothwell sat motionless in his leather chair, eyes closed, breathing steady, pretending to sleep. The billionaire had learned to expect the worst from people. 2 years of grief had taught him that everyone had a price, that kindness was just a performance masking greed. Today he would test his new maid, Emma Clarke, a struggling single mother who desperately needed this job. He'd left a diamond cufflink on his desk, a Rolex on the side table, cash carelessly tucked beneath papers. She would take something. They always did. But as Emma entered the study, moving with quiet reverence through the space where his late wife's memory still lived, something unexpected happened. She didn't reach for the valuables. Instead, she did something so simple, so achingly kind, that it would shatter every cynical belief Marcus had built around his broken heart. Neither of them knew that this moment, this test born of suspicion, would become the beginning of something that would save them both. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you. Emma Clarke stood at the iron gates of the Rothwell estate, her worn canvas bag clutched against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. 28 years old, and she felt ancient. Exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She'd been awake since 4 that morning, leaving Lily with Mrs. Chen from downstairs, the elderly neighbor who charged less than she should for watching a sick child. Lily had been coughing again, that wet, rattling sound that kept Emma awake with worry every night. The new medicine cost $240. Emma had $17 in her checking account. This job had to work. It simply had to. She pressed the intercom button with a trembling finger, announced herself, and watched the gates swing open with a quiet, expensive hum. The driveway alone was longer than her entire street. She walked up the pristine stone path, her second-hand shoes clicking softly, feeling smaller with every step. The mansion rose before her like something from a movie, all white columns and gleaming windows. The kind of place where people like her only existed to scrub floors and empty trash. Her coat was frayed at the cuffs. She pulled the sleeves down, hoping no one would notice. The front door opened before she could knock, revealing a tall woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Patterson, the head housekeeper, looked Emma up and down with the efficiency of someone cataloging inventory. Emma felt every stain on her clothes, every sleepless night visible on her face. "You're the new girl," Mrs. Patterson said, not a question. "Yes, ma'am. Emma Clarke. I'm so grateful for this opportunity." "We'll see about that. Come in. Wipe your feet." Emma stepped into a foyer that could have swallowed her entire apartment. Marble floors gleamed like ice. A chandelier dripped crystal overhead, probably worth more than Emma would earn in 5 years. She tried not to gape, tried to look like she belonged here, but her reflection in the polished floor told the truth. She was a shadow in a world of light. Mrs. Patterson walked briskly, speaking without turning around. "You'll work 6 days a week, 8 to 4. You're responsible for the guest rooms, the library, and Mr. Rothwell's private study. That's your most important assignment. The study is his sanctuary. You never, under any circumstances, disturb him when he's in there. You clean around him if necessary. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't touch anything you don't need to clean. Mr. Rothwell values his privacy above all else. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Emma whispered. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She needed this job. Lily needed this job. "Good. One more thing, Miss Clarke. Mr. Rothwell has been through a great deal. He's not the man he once was. Show respect, do your work well, and don't give him any reason to notice you. That's how you keep this position." Emma nodded, swallowing hard. Don't be noticed. Be invisible. She'd been practicing that her whole life. Marcus Rothwell sat in his study, the room where Catherine had spent countless afternoons reading by the window, and felt nothing but the familiar weight of absence. 42 years old, owner of a technology empire worth billions, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt anything beyond a dull, persistent ache Catherine's photograph sat on his desk in a silver frame, her smile frozen in a moment 2 years and 4 months ago, before the cancer, before the hospitals, before the empty house became his entire world. She'd been his compass, his conscience, the reason he'd built schools in struggling neighborhoods and funded medical research, and believed that wealth came with responsibility. When she died, she took that version of him with her. The man who remained was a stranger even to himself, hollowed out and suspicious, seeing ulterior motives in every smile, every kind word. He'd learned his lesson well. The nurse who'd sold stories about Catherine's final days to a tabloid. The personal assistant who'd stolen Catherine's jewelry and pawned it online. The driver who'd leaked his private schedule to photographers. The friend who'd asked for a loan and disappeared. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had a price. It was simply a matter of discovering what that price was before they could inflict more damage. Marcus had developed a system. New employees, especially those who worked in his private spaces, underwent a test. He would pretend to sleep in his study, leave valuables conspicuously placed, and watch through barely opened eyes to see what they would do. A diamond cufflink on the desk. Catherine's pearl earrings in an open drawer. A Rolex on the side table. $300 in cash, tucked beneath a stack of papers. Most people failed within the first week. They'd pocket something small, thinking he wouldn't notice, thinking they deserved it, thinking the rich man wouldn't miss a few hundred or a few $1,000s. He always noticed. He always fired them. It confirmed what he already knew. Goodness was a fairy tale Catherine had believed in, and he'd been a fool to believe it with her. Today, the new maid would arrive. Emma Clarke. Mrs. Patterson had hired her, said she seemed desperate for the work. Had a sick child. Needed the money. Perfect. Desperation made people predictable. She'd steal something, he'd catch her, and he'd add another name to the long list of people who'd proven his cynicism justified. Marcus arranged himself in his leather chair, the one that still held the faint scent of Catherine's perfume if he let himself imagine it. He placed the items carefully, making them accessible but not obvious. Then he closed his eyes, regulated his breathing, and waited. Let her show her true nature. Let her prove him right. It was easier than hoping to be wrong. Emma stood outside the study door, her hand on the brass handle, trying to gather courage from somewhere deep inside herself where courage had long since run dry. Mrs. Patterson had shown her the cleaning supplies, explained the schedule, and left her to begin. This was it, her first real task. She pushed the door open slowly, wincing at the whisper of hinges, and stepped into a room that smelled of old leather and expensive wood and something else. Something sad she couldn't quite name. Then she saw him. Mr. Rothwell sat in a massive leather chair near the window, his head tilted back, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of sleep. Emma froze. Should she leave? Come back later? But Mrs. Patterson had been clear about the schedule, about expectations, about not appearing lazy or incompetent. She couldn't afford to fail on her first day. Lily needed her to succeed. Emma made her decision. She would clean as quietly as possible. Let the man rest. And pray she didn't wake him. She set down her caddy of supplies with the care of someone diffusing a bomb, wincing at every tiny sound. Her movements became a study in silence. She lifted the feather duster like it was made of glass, approached the bookshelves on the balls of her feet, barely breathing. Each book spine was wiped with reverence. Each surface touched with the lightest pressure. Marcus watched through the narrow slits of his eyelids, his breathing maintained at the perfect sleeping pace through years of practice. Here it comes, he thought, the moment of truth. She was looking around the room now, taking inventory. Her gaze landed on the Rolex. He saw her notice it, saw her hand pause mid-reach toward a shelf. This was it. This was always it. Emma stared at the watch. It sat there on the mahogany side table, gleaming in the afternoon light. Probably worth more than she'd earn in a year. Maybe 2 years. Her fingers trembled. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, felt the familiar disappointment settling in his chest, even before the inevitable betrayal. Here we go again, Catherine. Here's your precious humanity. Emma reached toward the watch. Marcus's hands clenched beneath the blanket, draped across his lap. She picked it up, held it for a moment that stretched like taffy. And Marcus prepared to open his eyes, to confront her, to add her name to the list. Then Emma set the watch down carefully on the far edge of the table, pulled a cloth from her pocket, and wiped the ring of dust where it had been sitting. She cleaned the entire surface with meticulous attention, then placed the watch back exactly where she'd found it, adjusting it so it sat at the same angle as before. Marcus's eyes opened slightly wider despite himself. She hadn't taken it. She'd moved it to clean properly and put it back. Emma continued her work, unaware she was being observed, unaware that something in the man pretending to sleep had just shifted, just cracked open the smallest fraction. She moved to the desk, her touch feather-light on papers and pens, preserving the exact arrangement of everything. Emma paused in her dusting, her eyes drawn back to the sleeping man despite herself. His shoulders were hunched forward in a way that looked uncomfortable, tension visible even in sleep. The cashmere blanket that had been draped across his lap had slipped down, pooling around his feet, leaving his arms exposed to the cool air of the study. She shouldn't. It wasn't her place. She was here to clean, not to care for him like he was one of her patients back when she'd worked those 3 months as a nurse's aide before Lily got sick. But he looked cold. He looked, despite all his wealth and power, like he needed someone to simply care that he was cold. Emma bit her lip, glanced at the door as if Mrs. Patterson might materialize to scold her for overstepping, then made her decision. She moved with the silence of a ghost, lifted the blanket from where it had fallen, and gently, so gently, draped it back over his shoulders. Her fingers barely grazed the fabric of his shirt. She tucked the edges in with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd covered a sleeping child 1,000 times. There. That was better. Marcus felt the weight of the blanket settle over him, and something inside his chest cracked wide open. She'd covered him. Not stolen from him, not ignored him, but taken a moment from her work to make sure he was comfortable. When was the last time anyone had done something for him without wanting something in return? When was the last time someone had seen him as simply human? He kept his breathing steady through sheer force of will, but his mind was reeling. Emma stepped back, surveyed her work with a small, satisfied nod, then returned to cleaning. She noticed the coffee cup on his desk, half full and long since cold, a film forming on the surface. She reached for it, then hesitated. Removing it might make a sound, the ceramic against the wood. She couldn't risk waking him. He needed his rest. Everyone needed rest. She left the cup where it sat. Marcus noticed her hand hover and retreat, understood her reasoning, felt something dangerously close to warmth spread through his chest. Emma cleaned the desk with extraordinary care, moving around papers without disturbing them, wiping down the leather desk pad, organizing pens that had rolled astray. Then her cloth caught the edge of a picture frame, and it shifted. She picked it up to write it, and saw that it had been lying face down. A beautiful woman stared out from behind the glass, blonde hair catching sunlight, blue eyes bright with life and laughter. The late Mrs. Rothwell. Emma had seen the photos in the hallway. The portraits that marked a love story ended too soon. Her heart constricted with recognition. She knew that pain. She knew what it meant to put a photograph face down because looking hurt too much. With infinite gentleness, Emma set the frame upright on the desk, angled it so that when Mr. Rothwell woke, he'd see his wife's smile. She understood. Loss was loss, whether you grieved in a mansion or a tiny apartment. She touched the frame once more, a gesture of solidarity, of shared sorrow, then finished her work in silence. Emma worked her way through the study with the methodical precision of someone who couldn't afford mistakes, and with every careful movement, her mind wandered to the places it always went. Lily. Always Lily. Her baby girl. 6 years old, with David's dark curls and his gentle smile, lying in their cramped bedroom with that cough that wouldn't stop. The doctor said it was a chronic respiratory condition, something about weakened lungs, something that required expensive medications and specialists, and tests that their barely there insurance wouldn't cover. Emma had stopped sleeping through the night 3 months ago. listening instead for the sound of Lily's breathing, ready to rush in if the coughing got too bad. The medical bills sat in a drawer at home, red-stamped and threatening, numbers that made her stomach turn. She was working 3 jobs now. The mansion in the mornings and afternoons, the diner 4 evenings a week, and weekend shifts at a grocery store. This job, this beautiful, terrifying job, paid more than the other 2 combined. She couldn't lose it. She wouldn't lose it. David would have known what to do. David always knew what to do. 3 years since the construction accident, since the foreman had come to their apartment with his hat in his hands and devastation in his eyes. And Emma still reached for her husband in the night sometimes, still forgot for one blissful moment each morning that he was gone. He'd been 29, strong and healthy and full of plans for their future, and then he was just gone. She'd learned to carry grief like a second skeleton, the framework that held her upright when everything else wanted to collapse. Emma's hands trembled as she dusted the windowsill, exhaustion seeping through her bones. She'd slept 3 hours last night, maybe 4. The exhaustion was so constant now she barely noticed it anymore. Except in moments like this, when her vision blurred and she had to blink hard to focus. She moved to straighten the items on a side table and noticed the prescription bottles. 3 of them, lined up with labels facing out. She recognized the medications, had filled similar prescriptions for David before the accident. Heart medication, blood pressure. The 3rd bottle was empty. Emma picked it up, checked the label, saw it should have been refilled a week ago. Mr. Rothwell needed this medication. She'd have to tell Mrs. Patterson, discreetly, so he wouldn't run out. Even billionaires needed someone to notice when they were neglecting their health. Even people who had everything still needed care. Emma finished her work, gathered her supplies with the same quiet efficiency she'd used throughout. She looked back at the sleeping figure in the chair, at the blanket over his shoulders, at the photograph of his wife now facing forward. He looked peaceful now, less burdened. She hoped he was having good dreams. "Rest well, sir," she whispered, so softly the words barely disturbed the air. And then she slipped out of the study, closing the door with a click like a breath. Marcus sat perfectly still for a full minute after the door clicked shut, his eyes still closed, his mind racing through what had just happened. Then he opened his eyes fully, blinked against the afternoon light streaming through the windows, and felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Confusion. Complete and utter confusion. She hadn't taken anything. Not the watch. Not the cufflinks. Not the cash he'd left visible beneath papers on his desk. She'd cleaned with a care that bordered on reverence, treating his possessions like they mattered, treating his space like it was sacred. And then she'd covered him with a blanket. That simple gesture, that act of basic human kindness, sat in his chest like a stone. Heavy and strange and uncomfortable, Marcus looked down at the cashmere draped over his shoulders, touched it with uncertain fingers, and felt his throat tighten with an emotion he couldn't name. He turned his head and saw Catherine's photograph staring back at him. Her smile, radiant and knowing. He'd put it face down 3 days ago after a particularly dark night. Unable to bear the weight of her absence, Emma had righted it. She'd seen his grief, recognized it, honored it by bringing Catherine back into view. She would have liked her, Marcus whispered to the photograph, his voice rough from disuse. Catherine had always believed in people, had always seen the good even when Marcus pointed out the bad. She'd called him cynical even before tragedy had given him reason to be. What would she say now, seeing him set traps for desperate women, testing their integrity like it was a game? He felt ashamed. The feeling was so unfamiliar it took him a moment to recognize it. Marcus reached for the phone on his desk, pressed the intercom button. "Mrs. Patterson, could you bring me Emma Clarke's file, please?" "Right away, sir." She appeared within minutes, a manila folder in her hands, her expression carefully neutral. Marcus took it, dismissed her with a nod, and opened it alone. The details painted a picture of struggle that made his carefully orchestrated test seem cruel. Emma Clarke, 28, widowed 3 years, 1 dependent daughter aged 6 with chronic health issues, previous employment history scattered and brief, jobs that paid minimum wage and offered no benefits. Current residence. A fifth-floor walk-up in a neighborhood Marcus knew was barely a step above condemned. 3 personal references, all describing her as hardworking, honest, kind. Emergency contact. Mrs. Chen, neighbor, because there was no one else. Medical debt. The number made Marcus wince. It was nothing to him, a rounding error in his quarterly reports, but to Emma it was an insurmountable mountain. She was drowning, and she'd taken this job as a lifeline, and he'd set up a test to watch her fail. Except she hadn't failed. She'd shown him something he'd forgotten existed. Goodness without agenda. Kindness without expectation of reward. Marcus closed the folder, pressed his palms against his eyes, and felt the careful walls he'd built around his heart develop their first cracks. He needed to be certain. One day wasn't enough. People could fake goodness for a day. He'd continue watching, continue observing, but something inside him whispered that Emma Clarke was exactly what she appeared to be. A good person in a world that hadn't been good to her. Emma climbed the 5 flights of stairs to her apartment, each step an effort that pulled at muscles already stretched thin by exhaustion. The elevator had been broken for 6 months. The landlord kept promising repairs that never materialized. She'd stopped asking. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and mildew, familiar scents that no longer registered. She unlocked the 3 deadbolts on her door, the scraping sound announcing her arrival, and stepped into the tiny space she and Lily called home. The apartment was cold. The radiator clanked and hissed, but produced more noise than heat. Emma kept her coat on, made a mental note to ask Mrs. Chen if she could borrow an extra blanket. She checked the refrigerator out of habit, even though she knew what she'd find. Half a carton of milk, some wilted lettuce, 3 eggs, a jar of grape jelly, Lily's favorite cereal in the cupboard, running low. Emma's stomach growled, reminding her she'd skipped lunch to save money. From the bedroom came the sound that haunted her dreams. Coughing, deep, wet, rattling coughs that shook Lily's small frame. Emma dropped her bag and rushed in, found her daughter curled under 2 thin blankets, her face flushed with fever. "Mama," Lily whispered, her voice hoarse. "My chest hurts." "I know, baby. I know. Let me get your medicine." Emma went to the bathroom cabinet, pulled out the prescription bottle, and felt her heart sink. 3 pills left. 3 days. The refill would cost $215. She had to pick it up tomorrow or Lily would run out. Emma returned to the kitchen, opened the drawer where she kept the coffee can that held her cash. She dumped it onto the counter and began counting. Quarters, dimes, nickels. A few crumpled bills. $63.47. Her paycheck from the mansion wouldn't come for another week. The diner would pay her tomorrow, maybe $80 after taxes. Not enough. Not nearly enough. She could buy the medicine or she could buy food. She couldn't do both. Emma stared at the coins scattered across her counter and felt the familiar weight of impossible choices pressing down on her shoulders. Medicine, always medicine. She'd skip meals. She'd done it before. Lily needed to breathe. Everything else was negotiable. She remembered David standing in this same kitchen 3 years ago, before the accident, before everything fell apart. They'd been planning, dreaming out loud about the life they'd build. "We'll get a house," he'd said, pulling her close. "A real house with a yard. Lily will have her own room. Painted whatever color she wants. You'll go back to school, finish your nursing degree. We'll be okay. Better than okay." Those dreams felt like they'd belonged to different people, people who didn't know how quickly everything could be taken away. But Emma held on to them anyway. Held on to them for Lily, because her daughter deserved a life that wasn't defined by poverty and sickness and struggle. Emma pulled on her diner uniform, dabbed concealer under her eyes to hide the exhaustion, forced her face into something approximating a smile. 4 hours at the diner, then home to sit by Lily's bed through the night, listening to her breathe. Her phone alarm buzzed. Reminder: pick up Lily's prescription tomorrow. as if she could forget, as if every moment of her life wasn't organized around keeping her daughter alive. The second day, Marcus positioned himself in the same chair, the same posture, breathing regulated to the rhythm of sleep. He told himself he was being thorough, that due diligence required multiple observations, but the truth sat uncomfortably in his chest. He wanted to see her again. He wanted to know if yesterday had been real or a performance. A single day of good behavior before the mask slipped. He wanted, though he barely admitted it to himself, to feel that strange warmth again, that crack in the ice that had frozen him solid for 2 years. Emma entered at precisely 8:15, her footsteps even quieter than before, as if she'd spent the evening practicing silence. Marcus watched through the veil of his lashes as she set down her cleaning caddy, and he noticed something immediately. She'd brought her own supplies, a bottle of furniture polish that wasn't the industrial brand Mrs. Patterson ordered in bulk. Emma pulled it from her bag with careful hands, and Marcus could see the label. It was expensive, the kind of polish that nourished wood instead of just making it shine. She was spending her own money she clearly didn't have, to do a better job. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She began to work, and this time Marcus noticed something he'd missed before. She was humming, so softly he almost didn't hear it, a melody that was beautiful and achingly sad. The kind of song that spoke of loss and longing and carrying on anyway. The sound filled the study like a presence, like Catherine's ghost had returned to remind him what gentleness sounded like. Emma moved around the room with the grace of someone who understood that spaces held memories, that objects weren't just things but repositories of meaning. She polished the bookshelf with long, loving strokes, treated each book like it mattered. When she reached his desk, she paused, studied the arrangement with a critical eye, then made small adjustments. She moved his laptop slightly to the left, angled his reading lamp differently, shifted his pen holder closer to his dominant hand. Marcus realized what she was doing. Ergonomics. She was arranging his workspace to be more comfortable, more efficient. She was caring for him without even knowing if he'd notice. A sticky note caught her attention, one Marcus had scrawled with an important date and stuck haphazardly to the edge of his desk. Board meeting, 10th of November, 9 in the morning. Emma carefully peeled it off, pressed it onto a more visible spot on his desk calendar, smoothed out the corners so it would stay. She was ensuring he wouldn't miss it, this woman who had every reason to focus only on her own survival. Then Emma reached Catherine's photograph, and Marcus watched her pause. Really pause, her hand hovering over the silver frame. She picked it up gently, as if it were made of something more fragile than glass, and looked at Catherine's face for a long moment. A sad smile touched Emma's lips, the expression of someone who recognized a fellow traveler on the road of grief. She traced the edge of the frame with one finger, a gesture so tender it made Marcus's throat close. She understood. Somehow, this woman who'd known him for a day understood the shape of his loss because she carried her own. Emma set the photograph down with infinite care, angled it so the light caught Catherine's smile just right, and continued cleaning. Marcus felt something inside him that had been frozen solid begin, very slowly, to thaw. On the third day, Emma arrived, and Marcus knew immediately that something was wrong. Even through the careful veil of his pretended sleep, he could see her face was blotched red, her eyes swollen from crying. She moved into the study like someone carrying a weight too heavy to bear, her shoulders hunched, her steps uncertain. Whatever had happened, it had shaken her to her core. Marcus watched as she set down her cleaning supplies with trembling hands, watched as she pressed her palms against her eyes as if she could push the tears back inside. She took a shuddering breath, straightened her spine with visible effort, and began to clean, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Emma reached for a dust cloth, knocked it to the floor, bent to retrieve it with movements that seemed disconnected from intention. She was going through the motions, muscle memory carrying her forward, while her mind was somewhere else entirely. Marcus felt an unfamiliar urge to sit up, to ask what was wrong, to offer comfort. He stayed still. She moved to his desk, that dangerous geography of memories and meaning, and began to dust around the scattered papers and books. Her hand reached for the pen holder, adjusting it as she'd done before, but her fingers were shaking so badly she misjudged the distance. Her elbow caught the edge of Catherine's photograph. Time seemed to slow as the silver frame tipped, fell, hit the edge of the desk, and crashed to the floor. The sound of breaking glass split the silence like a scream. Emma gasped, a sound of pure horror, and dropped to her knees. "No, no, no," she whispered, gathering the frame with desperate, careful hands. The glass had cracked in a spider web pattern across Catherine's smile. Fragments falling away. Emma cradled the frame against her chest, and tears began streaming down her face in earnest now, silent and devastated. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the sleeping Marcus, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I would never—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus felt his heart crack open watching her. This woman, who had so little, who was breaking apart over damaging something precious to someone else. Her distress was so genuine, so complete, that he had to dig his fingernails into his palms to keep from reaching out to her. Emma carefully picked up every shard of glass, wrapped them in her dust cloth so no one would get hurt, then examined the photograph itself. Undamaged, thank God. She held it like it was made of butterfly wings, placed it gently on the desk, then pulled a notepad from her cleaning caddy. Her hand shook as she wrote, tears dripping onto the paper and smudging the ink. Marcus couldn't read it from his position, but he watched her write and rewrite, trying to find words adequate to her remorse. When she finished, Emma placed the note next to the photograph, wrapped the broken frame carefully in the cloth, and stood on unsteady legs. She looked at Marcus one more time, her face a portrait of devastation, whispered another broken apology to his sleeping form, and left the study with the careful silence of someone who'd just shattered something irreplaceable. Marcus opened his eyes fully the moment the door closed, reached for the note with hands that weren't quite steady, and read, "Mr. Rothwell, I am deeply sorry for breaking your photograph frame. There is no excuse for my carelessness. Please deduct the cost of replacement and repairs from my wages. I will pay whatever is necessary. I understand if you need to terminate my employment. Again, I am so very sorry. Emma Clarke." Marcus made his decision in the space between one heartbeat and the next. He couldn't do this anymore, couldn't sit in judgment while this woman tore herself apart over an accident, couldn't maintain the fiction of sleep while genuine suffering played out before him. He had to stop pretending. Emma was reaching for the door handle, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, when Marcus shifted in his chair and made a sound like someone waking naturally from sleep. He stretched, made a show of blinking against the light, and spoke in a voice deliberately gentle. "Is everything all right?" Emma froze, her hand on the doorknob, terror flooding her features. She turned slowly, her face pale beneath the blotches of tears, and Marcus saw the exact moment she realized he might have witnessed everything. "Mr. Rothwell, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. Her voice cracked. "I broke your photograph frame. I'm so sorry. It was an accident. But that doesn't excuse it. I'll pay for everything, I promise." Marcus stood, moved toward her slowly, the way you'd approach a frightened animal. "Emma, it's all right. Accidents happen. Please. Don't upset yourself. But your wife's picture." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "The glass is broken, and I know it must be irreplaceable, and I'm so sorry." "The frame can be replaced," Marcus said softly, and the truth of it surprised him. "Catherine's photograph is undamaged. That's all that matters. Please, sit down. You look like you're about to collapse." Emma shook her head, backing toward the door. "I should go. I've caused enough trouble." Something in his tone stopped her. "Sit down." She sank into the chair near his desk like her legs had given out, perched on the edge like she might need to flee at any moment. Marcus poured water from the crystal pitcher on his sidebar, handed her the glass. She took it with trembling hands. Didn't drink. Marcus settled back into his chair, studied her carefully. The red eyes, the exhaustion deeper than tiredness, the way she held herself like someone braced for the next blow. "Why have you been crying?" he asked gently. Emma's eyes widened. "I haven't. Emma, please. The truth." She looked down at her hands, at the water glass she held like a lifeline. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "It's nothing. Personal matters. It won't affect my work, I promise." "It's clearly not nothing." Marcus leaned forward, his voice careful. "Is it your daughter?" Emma's head snapped up, surprise and something like fear in her eyes. "How did you—" "Mrs. Patterson mentioned you have a daughter. Lily, isn't it?" Emma nodded slowly, fresh tears threatening. "She's sick. She has a respiratory condition. The medication she needs. The pharmacy called yesterday. The price increased. Insurance won't cover the full cost anymore. It's $215 for a 30-day supply. And her voice broke. "I don't have it. I'm $300 short on rent as it is. I don't know what to do. If she doesn't get her medicine, she can't breathe properly. But if I don't pay rent, we'll be evicted. I don't know how to choose between keeping my daughter breathing and keeping a roof over her head." She looked at Marcus, with eyes that held an ocean of despair. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. I shouldn't have brought my problems to work." Marcus felt something inside his chest expand and crack and reform into something new. This woman, who had nothing, who was drowning in circumstances beyond her control, had spent her own money on furniture polish to do a better job cleaning his study. Marcus sat back in his chair, studied Emma's tear-stained face, and made another decision that surprised him. He wanted to know her. This woman who'd inadvertently challenged everything he'd believed about human nature. "Tell me about Lily," he said softly. "What does she like? What makes her smile?" Emma looked up, confusion flickering across her features, but the invitation to talk about her daughter was irresistible. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "She loves books. She can't afford many, but the library is 2 blocks from our apartment, and she reads everything she can get her hands on. Fantasy stories mostly. Dragons and magic and brave heroes. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up, wants to help animals." Emma's voice warmed as she spoke, love transforming her exhausted features into something beautiful. "She's so smart, Mr. Rothwell. So kind. When she can breathe properly, when the medicine is working, she's full of life and questions and wonder. She draws me pictures of the places she wants to visit someday. Paris and London and castles in Scotland. She's never even been outside the city, but she dreams so big." Marcus felt his throat tighten. Catherine had dreamed like that, had seen possibility where others saw limitation. "She sounds remarkable." "She is." Emma's voice broke. "She deserves so much more than I can give her." "You're giving her everything that matters," Marcus said quietly. "Your love, your devotion, your sacrifice. That's not nothing, Emma." They sat in silence for a moment, the afternoon light slanting through the windows, dust motes dancing in the air. Then Marcus asked the question that had been burning in his mind for 3 days. "Why are you so careful with my belongings? With everything in this room?" Emma looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Because they're precious to you. That matters. Most people wouldn't care. Then, most people are wrong." Emma's voice was soft but certain. "Everything in this room tells a story about who you are, who you loved, what you've lost. Your wife's photograph, the books you've read and underlined, the blanket that still smells faintly of perfume. These aren't just things. They're memories. They deserve respect." Marcus felt something break apart inside his chest. "Emma, I need to tell you something. I haven't been asleep during your cleanings. I've been watching you." The color drained from Emma's face. She stood abruptly, the water glass nearly slipping from her fingers. "You were testing me. Oh God. You thought I would steal." Her voice was flat, mortified. "I'm so sorry. I understand if you want me to leave. Emma, please sit down. I should have known. Someone like you have to be careful. You have to protect yourself." "I'm not offended, I just—" Her voice wavered. "I wish you'd known you didn't need to test me." I was wrong to do it. Marcus stood as well, faced her across the desk. I've been burned before. Many times. I'd convinced myself that everyone had a price, that goodness was just a mask people wore until they could take advantage. You proved me wrong. Emma lifted her chin, and despite her tears, despite her exhaustion, there was dignity in her posture that made Marcus feel small. I don't steal, sir. I'm poor, not dishonest. Those aren't the same thing. Her words cut through Marcus's carefully constructed cynicism like a blade through silk, sharp and clean and devastating. She was right. Poverty didn't equal dishonesty. Desperation didn't equal corruption. He'd confused circumstances with character, and this woman, who had every reason to take what she needed, had instead given him care and kindness and respect. He'd tested her humanity, and she'd revealed his own deficit. Marcus looked at Emma standing before him, proud and poor and honest to her core, and felt something shift fundamentally in his understanding of the world. Catherine had been right all along. Goodness existed. It was rare, perhaps, or maybe he'd simply stopped looking for it. But it existed in this exhausted woman who treated his memories with reverence and his grief with understanding. He made a decision that surprised even himself. Emma, I'd like to offer you a new position. Full-time housekeeper, but with significantly different terms. Your salary will be tripled, and your hours will be reduced to 5 days a week, 8 to 3. That will give you time to be with Lily after school. Emma stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. I don't understand. Did you say tripled? Yes. You're exceptional at what you do, and exceptional work deserves exceptional compensation. Tears filled Emma's eyes again, but these were different, brighter. Mr. Rothwell, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. Her voice broke with relief and disbelief in equal measure. Marcus held up a hand. I'm not finished. I'd also like to help with Lily's medical expenses. All of them. The medications, the specialists, whatever she needs. The gratitude in Emma's face vanished, replaced by something more complicated. She shook her head slowly. I can't accept that. The salary? Yes. That's honest work for honest pay. But I can't take charity. I won't. Emma, your daughter needs medicine. I know that. I'll find a way. I always find a way. Her voice was firm despite the tears still wet on her cheeks. I appreciate the offer more than you know, but I can't accept money I haven't earned. I have my pride. Mr. Rothwell, sometimes it's all I have. Marcus felt a wave of respect so powerful it nearly knocked him backward. She was refusing help she desperately needed because she wouldn't compromise her integrity. Catherine would have loved her. What if it's not charity? What if it's a healthcare benefit, part of your employment package? Many positions include health insurance. Emma hesitated, understanding the fiction he was offering her, the way to accept help without sacrificing dignity. That's different? Completely different. You'd be earning it through your work. It's standard practice for full-time employees. Marcus was making this up as he went, but it felt right. Felt like something Catherine would have encouraged. I have excellent health insurance through the company. Adding dependents costs me nothing. It's simply extending a benefit to a valued employee. Emma searched his face for a long moment, looking for pity or condescension. Marcus kept his expression neutral, professional, offering her the gift of treating this as a business transaction rather than rescue. Finally, she nodded. If it's truly a benefit, then yes. Thank you. Lily needs help. I can't give her alone. You've reminded me of something I'd lost, Marcus said quietly. Not sure he should say it, but unable to stop himself. Something I thought died with my wife. You've reminded me that kindness still exists, that integrity isn't just a concept from a simpler time. You've given me more than you know. Emma didn't understand. He could see it in her confused expression, but she nodded anyway. I just clean, sir, but I try to do it well. You do everything well, Marcus said. That's precisely the point. As Emma left his study, walking lighter than she had in months, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt since Catherine died. Hope, the possibility that the world wasn't as dark as he'd convinced himself. that people like Emma existed. And maybe, just maybe, he could learn to see the light again. The weeks unfolded like pages in a book Marcus hadn't known he'd been waiting to read. Emma arrived each morning at 8, and Marcus found himself in his study at that exact time. No longer pretending to sleep, but openly present. Their arrangement now one of comfortable routine rather than deception. She cleaned with the same meticulous care, but now they talked. Brief conversations that somehow meant more than any of the lengthy business discussions Marcus engaged in throughout his days. Emma told him about Lily in careful increments, sharing her daughter's world like precious gifts. How Lily had started a notebook of animal facts, dreaming of the day she could work with creatures who needed help. How she'd memorized the periodic table just because she thought the element names sounded like magic spells. How she'd asked Emma if heaven had a library, because if it did, maybe Daddy wasn't lonely. Marcus listened to these stories and felt his frozen heart continue its slow thaw. One morning, Emma pulled a photograph from her pocket, worn soft at the edges from constant handling. "This is Lily," she said, offering it to Marcus with the trust of someone sharing something sacred. The little girl in the photo had dark curls framing a face lit with joy, gap-toothed smile wide, holding a book nearly as big as she was. Marcus held the photograph gently, understanding now why Emma had treated Catherine's picture with such reverence. This was what love looked like, captured in paper and ink. "She's beautiful," he said, meaning it. "She has your eyes." "She has her father's smile," Emma replied softly. And Marcus heard the grief she carried like background music to every moment of her life. The next day, Marcus left a book on his desk, a beautiful illustrated guide to mythical creatures with a note that read simply, "For Lily, if she'd like it." Emma found it during her cleaning, held it to her chest. And when Marcus returned to his study that afternoon, she was waiting with tears in her eyes and gratitude in her voice. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. Does she like dragons?" "She loves dragons. She's going to treasure this." The gesture opened something between them. Emma began bringing small offerings of her own. Homemade cookies on a Tuesday, the chocolate chips probably purchased with money she couldn't spare. "You need to eat more than business lunches," she insisted, pushing the container across his desk. "These are from Lily's recipe." "Well, my recipe, but she helped." Marcus bit into one and was surprised by the wave of simple pleasure that accompanied the taste. When had he last eaten something made with care rather than purchased with money? "These are wonderful," he said, and Emma's smile was worth more than gold. They began to talk about deeper things. One rainy afternoon, Marcus found himself speaking about Catherine, really speaking about her, not the careful edited version he gave to acquaintances, but the real story of their love and her loss. Emma listened with complete attention, asking gentle questions, offering no platitudes or empty comfort, just presence and understanding. "She sounds like she was extraordinary," Emma said when he finished. "She was. She believed in people in a way I never could. Until recently." Marcus met Emma's eyes across the desk. "She would have liked you. She would have told me I was a fool for testing you. Maybe you needed to test me to learn to trust again." Emma's voice was soft, wise beyond her circumstances. "Grief makes us careful. There's no shame in that." For the first time since Catherine died, Marcus felt understood, not pitied, not managed, but genuinely understood by someone who knew what it meant to lose everything and keep going anyway. Emma arrived on a Thursday morning, and Marcus knew immediately that something was catastrophically wrong. She stumbled through the door of his study, her face ashen, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold her cleaning supplies. She looked like someone who'd been struck by lightning, shocked into a state beyond tears, beyond panic, into a numb horror that was somehow worse than either. "Emma!" Marcus stood immediately, crossed to her in 3 long strides. "What happened?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first, just a gasp like someone drowning. Then the words tumbled out in a broken rush. "Lily. She collapsed this morning. Mrs. Chen called an ambulance. She's at County General. They're running tests, but the doctor said her lungs are failing, said the medication isn't working anymore. Said she needs to be hospitalized immediately." Emma's voice climbed higher with each word, panic threading through the shock. They want to try an experimental treatment, something new, but insurance won't cover it because it's not approved yet. They said it costs $60,000. 60,000. I don't have 60,000. I don't have 600. I don't know what to do. I can't lose her. I can't lose her too. She finally broke then, sobs tearing from her chest like something vital being ripped away. Marcus caught her as her legs gave out, guided her to a chair, knelt before her. Emma, listen to me. We're going to fix this. Tell me about the treatment. What's it called? Who are the doctors? I shouldn't be here. Emma pressed her hands against her face. I should be with Lily. I just came to tell you I can't work today. Maybe not this week. I'm so sorry. I know you're counting on me, but my daughter is dying and I don't know what to do. Her voice shattered on the last word. The treatment, Emma. Focus. Tell me everything the doctors said. Marcus kept his voice calm, steady, an anchor in her storm. Emma pulled a crumpled paper from her pocket, hands shaking so badly she could barely unfold it. Marcus took it gently, read the medical terminology, the names of specialists, the experimental protocol that could save Lily's life if only it were accessible. Stay here, Marcus said, standing. I'm making some phone calls. You're not working today. You're going to sit here, breathe, and let me help. Marcus! I can't ask you to. It was the first time she'd used his first name. The intimacy of crisis-dissolving formality. You're not asking. I'm offering. Now sit. Marcus moved to his desk, pulled out his phone, and began making calls. He contacted the hospital administrator, a man who owed him favors from a foundation donation 3 years prior. He called the leading pulmonologist in the state, someone Catherine had worked with on a charity board. He called his personal physician, demanded names and connections. Emma sat frozen in the chair, listening to Marcus speak with the authority of someone used to making impossible things happen. She heard phrases like, transfer her immediately, best specialists available, cost is irrelevant, I want her in a private room within the hour. She couldn't process it, couldn't understand what was happening, could only sit in the eye of her personal hurricane while Marcus somehow, impossibly, seemed to be stopping the wind. Marcus finished his last call, set down his phone, and turned to find Emma staring at him with an expression caught somewhere between hope and disbelief. He crossed back to her, pulled his chair close, and sat so they were eye level. Lily is being transferred to St. Catherine's Medical Center as we speak. It's the best hospital in the state. I've arranged for Dr. Patricia Holloway to oversee her care. She's the leading pediatric pulmonologist in the country. The experimental treatment will begin as soon as Lily is stabilized. All expenses are covered, everything. The treatment, the hospital stay, follow-up care, whatever she needs. Emma stared at him like he'd spoken in a language she didn't understand. I don't. Marcus, that's $60,000. Maybe more with the hospital stay. I can't accept that. I can't possibly. You can, and you will. Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. Emma, please, let me do this. It's too much. It's too much to accept. I have nothing to give you in return. Fresh tears spilled down Emma's cheeks, overwhelming gratitude warring with bone-deep pride. I'll never be able to repay you. Never. You understand that? I'll be in your debt for the rest of my life. You already repaid me, Marcus said quietly. You just don't realize it. How? By cleaning your study? By breaking your picture frame? By bringing you cookies? Emma's voice climbed, hysteria edging in. How could I possibly have given you anything worth $60,000? You gave me back my faith in people. Marcus reached out, took her trembling hands in his. Emma. When Catherine died, something in me died with her. I stopped believing in goodness. I thought everyone wanted something. That kindness was just a transaction. That the world was full of people waiting to take advantage. I tested you because I expected you to fail, expected you to prove my cynicism right. Emma tried to pull her hands away, but Marcus held gently firm. That first day, I watched you cover me with a blanket. Such a small thing, but you did it because you saw another human being who looked cold. You didn't know I was awake. You didn't expect thanks or reward. You just did it because it was kind. Do you understand what that meant to someone who'd forgotten kindness existed? I was just doing what anyone would do, Emma whispered. No, that's exactly the point. It's what anyone should do, but so few actually do. You treated Catherine's photograph like it was precious, because you understood it was precious to me. You spent your own money on furniture polish because you wanted to do good work, not just adequate work. You found my empty medication bottle and told Mrs. Patterson because you were worried about my health. You've been struggling to keep your daughter alive, and still you brought me cookies because you thought I looked lonely. Marcus's voice broke slightly. You reminded me what my wife believed. What I'd forgotten. That there's still goodness in this world. That integrity and kindness aren't fairy tales. You woke something in me that had been dead for 2 years. I don't feel worthy of this, Emma said, tears streaming freely now. I'm just trying to survive. I'm not special. You're extraordinary, Marcus said firmly. And Lily is going to get the treatment she needs. Please, Emma, let me do this. Let me honor Catherine's memory by doing what she would have done without hesitation. Let me be the person she believed I could be. Emma looked at him for a long moment, then collapsed forward, sobbing against his shoulder. Marcus held her while she broke apart. This strong woman who'd carried impossibility for so long finally allowed to set it down. Emma sat by Lily's hospital bed in a private room that felt like something from a dream. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, windows that looked out over the city, medical equipment that hummed quietly instead of beeping urgently. Street. Catherine's medical center was a different universe from County General, where they'd started the morning in a crowded emergency room with fluorescent lights and the smell of disinfectant and fear. Lily lay against pristine white pillows, an oxygen tube in her nose, IV in her small arm. But her color was already better. The breathing treatments had started, the preliminary medications flowing through her system, buying time until the experimental protocol could begin. Her daughter looked tiny in the large bed, but her eyes were bright with curiosity rather than dulled with pain. Mama, Lily said, her voice hoarse but stronger than it had been in weeks. Who's the nice man who helped us? Emma stroked her daughter's dark curls, emotion thick in her throat. His name is Mr. Rothwell. Marcus. He's someone I work for, someone who turned out to be very kind. You said he lost someone too, his wife. Lily's eyes, so perceptive for 6 years old, studied her mother's face. He must be very sad. Yes, baby, he is sad. Then we should help him. Lily said it like it was obvious, like it was the simplest thing in the world. When I get better, can we help him not be sad anymore? Emma felt her heart crack open. Here was her daughter, struggling to breathe, facing weeks of treatment and uncertainty, worried about a stranger's sadness. How did you get to be so wise? Daddy told me to take care of you when he went to heaven. Lily said seriously. But maybe we can take care of Mr. Marcus too. Everybody needs taking care of sometimes. Emma was crying again, but these were different tears, the kind that came from overwhelming love and pride. Her daughter understood things that adults spent lifetimes learning. The next afternoon, Marcus arrived with a bouquet of flowers and a children's book about dragons. Emma saw him through the window in the door, hesitating like he wasn't sure he should intrude, and she waved him in. Lily, someone's here to meet you. Marcus entered tentatively, this powerful man suddenly uncertain in the presence of a small, sick child. But Lily's face lit up immediately, that gap-toothed smile breaking through despite her obvious exhaustion. You're Mr. Marcus! Mama said you're sad too, but you helped us anyway. That makes you a hero. Marcus stopped mid-step, visibly stunned. He looked at Emma, then back at Lily, and something in his expression softened completely. I'm not a hero, Lily. I'm just someone who wanted to help. Heroes always say that. Lily informed him with the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old. In all my books, the heroes don't think they're special, but they are. You're special because you helped us even though you're sad. That's very brave. Marcus moved closer to the bed, pulled up a chair, and Emma watched something remarkable happen. Her daughter, with her innocent wisdom and unguarded heart, reached out and took Marcus's hand. "It's okay to be sad," Lily said. "I'm sad about my daddy all the time. But Mama says we can be sad and still find happy things too. Do you find happy things sometimes?" Marcus's eyes were suspiciously bright. "I'm starting to. You and your mother are teaching me how." He saw Catherine in this child, her spirit living in Lily's resilience and kindness, and absolute faith in goodness. The doctors came in with optimistic reports, talking about treatment protocols and positive signs. And Marcus stayed, listening, asking questions, being present. When Lily fell asleep, exhausted from the excitement and medication, Marcus and Emma stood by the window watching the city lights flicker on as dusk fell. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "For everything." "Thank you," Marcus replied, "for reminding me what matters." The weeks that followed transformed all three of them in ways none could have predicted. Lily's condition improved steadily, the experimental treatment working better than the doctors had dared hope. Her lungs grew stronger, her cough subsided, her energy returned in cautious increments. Emma watched her daughter come back to life like a flower after rain, and the relief was so profound it hurt. Marcus became a fixture in their daily routine, visiting the hospital every afternoon without fail. He brought books first, building a small library on Lily's bedside table, fantasy novels and science guides and illustrated encyclopedias. Then toys, carefully chosen. A stuffed dragon that Lily named Catherine, which made Marcus's eyes shine with emotion. Art supplies, so she could draw during the long hospital hours. A telescope for when she was well enough to stargaze from the rooftop garden. Emma noticed the change in Marcus before he seemed to notice it himself. He smiled more. Genuine smiles that reached his eyes and softened the harsh lines grief had carved into his face. He laughed at Lily's jokes, her 6-year-old observations about the world delivered with complete seriousness. He seemed lighter somehow, the weight of isolation lifting from his shoulders day by day. One afternoon, while Lily napped, Marcus sat with Emma in the hospital cafeteria and spoke about something he'd been considering. "I want to start a foundation, in Catherine's name, focused on helping families facing medical crises they can't afford. Families like yours." Emma looked up from her coffee, surprised. "That's a wonderful idea." "I need your help," Marcus continued. "I know how to donate money, but I don't know what families actually need." "Not really. The foundation shouldn't just throw money at problems. It should address real needs in practical ways. You understand those needs in a way I never could." So Emma became his consultant, explaining the gaps in the system that swallowed families whole. The need for transportation to medical appointments, meal assistance, help with utilities when medical bills consumed entire paychecks, emergency funds for prescriptions, someone to watch other children while parents sat in hospital rooms, support groups for families navigating impossible choices. Marcus listened, took notes, asked questions, and began building something meaningful. The Catherine Rothwell Foundation took shape over those weeks, designed not by someone who'd studied poverty from a distance, but by someone who'd lived it, with resources provided by someone who finally understood how to use his wealth for genuine good. Marcus found himself excited about work again, engaged in a way he hadn't been since Catherine died. He woke up with purpose, spent his days building something that mattered, something that would have made his wife proud. He realized, with some surprise, that he was happy, not the uncomplicated happiness of his life before loss, but something deeper. Something earned through grief and rebuilt with intention. His relationship with Emma deepened into something neither of them had words for. Not romance, though there was love. Not family, though they'd become essential to each other. Something rarer. Genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared understanding, and the recognition that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we thought we were saving. "You gave me back my life," Marcus told Emma one evening as they watched Lily sleep, her breathing easy and natural. "We gave each other back," Emma replied. And it was true. The day Dr. Holloway declared Lily in remission, Emma wept with a joy so profound it felt like her entire body was made of light. 6 weeks of treatment, 6 weeks of watching her daughter fight with courage that humbled everyone around her, and finally, the words she'd been praying for. She's responding beautifully. I'm comfortable releasing her with follow-up care. Take your daughter home, Emma. Home. They were going home. Marcus was waiting in the hallway when they emerged from the doctor's office, and Lily ran to him on legs that had grown stronger, threw her arms around his waist. I get to go home, Mr. Marcus. I'm all better. I heard, little dragon, Marcus said, lifting her up despite hospital protocol, despite the impropriety, just holding this child who'd become so precious to him. I'm so proud of you. Will you come visit me at home? It's not fancy like the hospital, but Mama makes good cookies. Marcus looked over Lily's head to Emma, saw the uncertainty there. Their worlds had merged in this sterile hospital environment. But what happened when they returned to reality, to the vast gulf between his mansion and her 5th-floor walk-up? Marcus said, setting Lily down gently. I was hoping you'd both come to my home first. A celebration. Just the 3 of us and some very excited staff members who've been asking about you every day. Emma hesitated. Marcus, we don't want to impose. Please, he said simply. And Emma nodded. The mansion looked different to Emma now. Entering through the front door as a guest rather than an employee, Mrs. Patterson stood in the foyer, her stern face cracked by a genuine smile. And the other staff members had gathered, clapping as Lily entered. Balloons floated against the ceiling, a banner reading, Welcome Home Lily, stretched across the staircase, and Lily's eyes went wide with wonder. Is this a palace? She whispered to Emma. It's Mr. Marcus's home, Emma replied, squeezing her daughter's hand. But Lily wasn't impressed by the marble or the chandeliers or the obvious wealth. She was looking for Marcus, and when she found him, she ran to him again, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. I made you something. In the hospital. For saying thank you. Marcus unfolded the paper and felt his breath catch. It was a crayon drawing, the kind only a child could make, simple and profound. 3 figures held hands under a bright sun, a tall man in a blue suit, a woman with yellow hair, and a small girl with dark curls. Above them, written in careful block letters, My family. That's you and Mama and me, Lily explained unnecessarily. Because you're part of our family now. Families are people who love each other, and we love you. Marcus knelt down, eye level with Lily, and couldn't speak for a moment. When he found his voice, it was rough with emotion. This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me. I'm going to frame it and put it in my study, right next to your grandmother Catherine's picture. She'd like that, Lily said with absolute certainty. She sounds nice. Emma watched Marcus stand, watched him carefully fold the drawing like it was made of gold, and felt tears threaten again. Marcus, I can never repay what you've done for us. You already have, Marcus said, meeting her eyes. You gave me something worth more than money. You gave me purpose, connection, hope. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning. You gave me family. They shared dinner in the study where it had all begun. Lily chattering about her plans to return to school, to show her friends the books Marcus had given her, and to help her mama with the foundation work. Marcus watched Emma and Lily together, saw the love that bound them, and felt it extend to include him. For the first time since Catherine died, he didn't feel like he was simply existing. He felt alive. 6 months later, the Catherine Rothwell Foundation occupied a full floor of Marcus's downtown office building, and Emma Clarke sat at a desk with her name on the door, title engraved on a brass plate, Director of Family Outreach. She'd protested the title, said coordinator was fine, but Marcus had insisted. She wasn't just coordinating, she was directing the heart of the entire operation, identifying families in crisis, understanding their needs with the insight of someone who'd lived on the knife's edge of survival. The foundation had already helped 43 families, providing everything from emergency medical funds to housing assistance to transportation vouchers to child care support. Each family's story crossed Emma's desk. and she read them with the careful attention of someone who saw her own reflection in every desperate plea for help. She knew which needs were urgent, which could wait, what made the difference between a family surviving and a family thriving. Marcus trusted her judgment completely, signed off on her recommendations without hesitation, and watched their shared vision become reality. Marcus himself had changed in ways that surprised everyone who knew him. He'd reconnected with old friends, people he'd shut out after Catherine's death, inviting them to foundation events and actually engaging rather than just attending. He laughed at dinner parties. He asked about people's lives and genuinely listened to the answers. He'd opened his heart again, cautiously at first, then with increasing confidence as he remembered how to trust. Lily was thriving, healthy and vibrant, her lungs strong, her future bright with possibility. She visited Uncle Marcus every Saturday, a tradition that had developed organically and that Marcus now structured his entire week around. They'd have breakfast in the mansion's sunroom, Lily chattering about school and friends and the books she was reading, Marcus listening with the rapt attention of someone who'd forgotten how much joy a child's enthusiasm could bring. Sometimes Emma joined them, sometimes she let them have their time together, recognizing that the bond between Marcus and Lily was its own precious thing. The three of them had become a family, not through blood or law but through choice and care, and the recognition that love came in many forms. Emma and Marcus's relationship had grown profound and unshakable, built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared trauma, and the understanding that they'd saved each other in equal measure. They worked together seamlessly, finished each other's sentences, knew when the other was struggling just by the set of their shoulders. They'd both healed parts of themselves they'd thought were permanently broken, had found wholeness not through forgetting their losses, but through honoring them while still moving forward. Marcus often found himself in his study, the room where everything had changed, and remembered that first day. Emma entering with trembling hands, cleaning with such care, covering him with a blanket because he looked cold. Such a small act, barely worth noting, and yet it had cracked open the door to his frozen heart just enough for light to seep through. One blanket, one moment of simple human kindness. That's all it had taken to begin the transformation. The mansion itself had transformed too. Where once it had been a mausoleum of memories, silent and cold and haunted by absence, it now rang with life. Lily's laughter echoed in the hallways. Emma's presence brought warmth to every room she entered. Staff members smiled more, relaxed more, felt the shift from a house in mourning to a home being lived in. Marcus had Catherine's photograph in his study still, but now Lily's crayon drawing hung beside it, and both made him smile rather than ache. 1 year after that first encounter, Emma and Marcus stood together in the study where everything had changed. Afternoon light slanting through the windows, exactly as it had on that fateful day. Marcus had asked her to come, said he had something to show her, and now he opened a velvet box to reveal the antique Rolex. The watch Emma had moved so carefully that first morning, polished to gleaming perfection. But it was different now. The back had been engraved with words that made Emma's breath catch. To remember, kindness costs nothing, but means everything. Marcus. No, Emma said immediately, pushing the box back toward him. That watch is worth a fortune. I can't accept it. You taught me what's truly valuable, Marcus said, closing her fingers around the box. Money, possessions, wealth, none of it means anything without human connection, without compassion, without the simple recognition that we're all struggling and we all deserve care. You taught me that by moving this watch aside to clean beneath it instead of pocketing it, by covering a stranger with a blanket, by treating memories with reverence. This watch sat on a table gathering dust for 2 years. Now it means something because of you. Emma looked down at the engraving, tears blurring her vision. I was just being decent. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. They don't. That's the whole point. Marcus guided her to the window, and they stood looking out over the grounds where Lily was playing with Mrs. Patterson's grandson, her laughter carrying on the breeze. Catherine used to stand right here and tell me that kindness was the only currency that mattered. I stopped believing her when she died. You made me believe again." They turned together to look at Catherine's photograph, still in its place of honor on the desk. Lily's drawing beside it, both women smiling from their frames. "I think Catherine sent you to me," Marcus said softly. "I think she knew I was drowning, and she sent someone who understood loss, who knew how to be gentle with broken things. I think David would be proud of what we've built." Emma replied, her voice thick with emotion. "The foundation, the families we've helped. This strange and beautiful friendship. He always believed in helping others. He'd like knowing Lily and I found someone who believed the same thing." They stood in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been shattered by loss and had somehow managed to help each other heal, understanding that grief never fully disappeared but could be transformed into something meaningful. Something that honored those they'd lost while still embracing life. And here, in this moment, we must pause to recognize the profound truth at the heart of this story. Marcus Rothwell had everything money could buy, and nothing that mattered. Emma Clarke had nothing but debt and struggle, and still found room in her heart for kindness. One small act, one gesture of basic human decency, became the catalyst that transformed two broken lives into something whole. This is the power of compassion, the extraordinary impact of ordinary kindness. We live in a world that often feels cold and transactional, where everyone seems to want something, where trust is a luxury and cynicism feels like wisdom. But Emma's story reminds us that goodness still exists, that integrity matters, that the simple choice to treat another human being with care and respect can change everything. You never know whose life you're touching. The person you're kind to today might be drowning in grief, might be testing humanity one last time before giving up entirely, might be desperately needing proof that goodness still exists in the world. Your small act of kindness, the thing you barely think about, might be the lighthouse that guides someone home. So be the person who covers a stranger with a blanket. Be the person who treats others' memories with reverence. Be the person who sees beyond circumstances to character, beyond poverty to dignity, beyond brokenness to potential. Choose kindness, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because you never know whose life you might be saving. In the end, Marcus, Emma, and Lily became a family built not on blood or obligation, but on the simple revolutionary act of caring for one another. They proved that love comes in many forms, that family is who you choose, and that sometimes the people we save are actually the ones saving us. Kindness costs nothing but means everything. Remember that, practice that, be that, and watch how the world transforms, one small act of compassion at a time.